Hello everyone, my name's Catherine. I work for the Marine Conservation Society and I'm absolutely delighted to be helping give the children's lecture today with the Royal Geographical Society. So, as I work for the Marine Conservation Society, doing everything we can to protect our wonderful ocean, I thought I would do my lecture today from the beach. So let's go get started. Hello everyone, so I'm on my way down to the beach and today I'm coming to you from beautiful South Queensferry, just outside of Edinburgh. You might be able to see the famous 4th rail bridge in the background. Just had a train going over it, so keep an eye out. And you might actually look, there's one right behind me just now. There's a train crossing over the bridge here in beautiful Scotland. So I'm the Scotland Conservation Officer for the Marine Conservation Society, so I get to spend a lot of my time heading down to the beach. And the reason I started working for the Marine Conservation Society, I actually started as a volunteer because I love the ocean so much and all of the sea creatures that live in it. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was ocean optimism. So I consider myself an ocean optimist, and I wonder if you will too after this. Basically, it's anybody who gets really excited and really loves the ocean and all the wonderful sea creatures that live in it. And it's maybe getting excited telling other people about the ocean or talking about your favourite sea creatures. And it's also taking action and learning about what you can do to help protect the sea. So what I want you to do just now, if you're with someone, have a wee chat. And if you could decide on one wildlife species that lives in the ocean, what would it be? What's your favourite sea creature? And I'm going to have a wee look at the sea and if I can think of mine. So I'll come back, I'll give you 10 seconds to have a chat. And if you're on your own, just close your eyes and have a think. What would your favourite sea creature be? And I'll be back in. Have you thought of one? It's really difficult, isn't it? There's so many. For me, I think my favourite sea creature almost changes every single day. But there's one sea creature that I wanted to talk about to you today, and I think my favourite today is the leatherback sea turtle. Did you know that we get turtles coming to Scotland, coming to the UK every single summer? It's so exciting. So many people tend to forget that the seas around the UK and around Scotland aren't that exciting, whereas we've got so many incredible sea creatures that live just beneath the waves and some amazing visitors, including the leatherback sea turtle. Now, they come every year, every summer usually, to gobble up jellyfish. That's their favourite food. They love to eat all the jellyfish that we have around the UK in our seas. Now, I'm lucky enough to be a trained scuba diver, so I can actually go out with my friends underneath the water to see some of these amazing sea creatures, maybe some of your favourites too. But when we go diving, we can't talk to each other like I'm talking to you just now. We've got to use a different kind of language. Does anyone know what that is? When we go under the water, we can't use our mouths. We use our hands, so we use different hand signals to talk to each other. And there's loads of different ones for different sea creatures. So I'll teach you the one for leatherback sea turtle. It's really easy. If you put both your hands out in front of you like this, and then one on top of the other, and then close all your fingers together, but leave your thumbs out, and then roll your thumbs, that's the underwater symbol for turtle. Now I wonder if you can come up with one for your sea creature. So we've had loads of great ones before, like this one for jellyfish, this one for crabs, we've had this one for dolphins or for whales. There's so many different ones. So maybe to help spread your ocean optimism and your love for the sea, you could come up with your own hand signal for your favourite sea creature to teach others and to share with us online as well. We would love to see them. So now we've got our ocean optimism all started, we'll carry on down to the beach. We've made it to the beach, woohoo! So we're just at a little beach next to South Queensferry Harbour, so you can still just see the bridge over the wall in the background. Now, why have I decided to come to the beach today to talk to you all? Well, the Marine Conservation Society is a UK-wide charity and we work in 3 different main areas to try and protect our ocean, to recover it and celebrate all the amazing things about it. So the first area we work on is an area called ocean recovery. So this is all about our big, beautiful blue ocean and the creatures that live in it and making sure that we're recovering and protecting it. So this might be putting in place marine protected areas, special places in the sea that are protected so our creatures can recover and thrive there. We also work on sustainable seafood as well. So if you enjoy maybe fish and chips at the weekend, or you enjoy your fish fingers, then we actually work to try and make that as sustainable, as healthy as possible for the ocean. So you could maybe check out our Good Fish Finger Guide or our Good Fish Guide to help you, and maybe when you're helping with the shopping, choose the most sustainable fish to then protect and look after all of the fish out in the ocean. And our last area of work is called Clean Seas and Beaches. And this is the area of work that I do most of my work up in Scotland, which is why I wanted to take you to one of my nearest beaches to talk about the work we do there. And this is all about trying to keep our beaches and our seas clean of litter, of dangerous chemicals or any other pollutants that might be harming all of those favourite sea creatures you mentioned earlier on, all of our wildlife, and also everything that lives in our ocean. So one of the first projects that we run as part of our Clean Seas and Beaches work are beach cleans. And it's not just a beach cleaning that we go and we pick up all the litter that we find and throw it away and that's it. Although that's brilliant, because every single piece of litter that you pick up is one less that's going to enter the ocean and impact our wildlife. But what we do is something called citizen or community science, where not only do you pick up litter, but you write down what you find, so then we can use that as data and as evidence to try and get things changed for the better for our sea. So we're going to do a mini beach clean together today to have a look at what kind of things we find and how you can all take part in citizen science. So a little bit like if you're studying science at school, when you're coming up with a methodology or the how to do it plan, you've got to make sure that every time you do it, it's got to be the same. So it's the same for our beach cleans. So one rule is that it's always got to be a 100-metre stretch of beach. So this little beach behind me here is not 100 meters. So I'm going to need to go and find myself a longer beach. So let's go and see if we can find one where we can mark out 100 meters to do our beach clean and our citizen science survey. So I found our bigger beach where we can do our beach clean. And before we get started, there's a few bits of kit that you're going to need to know how to use. So here is my beach cleaning kit that I always keep in the car. We've got our litter picker in the middle there, and then some gloves. It's always really important to be wearing gloves when you're beach cleaning, and always to make sure you wash your hands afterwards. Then on the clipboard I've got the Marine Conservation Society survey sheet, so I can write down what litter items that I find and pick up, and I can put these in my green bag to then go into a bin, or it can then go into one of my black bin bags. I've got a bucket in case we find any sharp glass or anything that needs to go in there, and I've also got a bit of a sharps kit because sometimes we do find things like needles that we want to make sure we're not picking up with our hands at all. So we've got a special kit there and a first aid kit just in case I cut myself and I need a plaster. So these are things I'd recommend that you always take with you when you're going to get started on your beach clean. So you can find all the information on how to run a beach clean with us safely for you and for the sea on our website, which is www.mcsuk.org/beachwatch. Beachwatch is the name of our citizen and community science project, so don't worry if you can't catch everything I say just now. It's all on the website and we would love for you to get involved. But also remember, if you don't live next to the sea, you can do litter picks wherever you are. A lot of the litter that ends up on our beaches and in our seas comes from the land. So if you can stop it before it gets into rivers, into drains, or blown out to sea, you'll be helping the ocean no matter where you live. So I'm going to go put on my gloves now, get my bag, my litter picker and my survey sheet, and I'll go see what I can find. Hello everyone! So that's me back from my beach clean. I just did a 10-minute walk along the Strand line today, so I won't input all of my information. This is just to give you an idea of the types of things that we find on our beach cleans and that you might find on beaches near you, or even maybe in parks and streets and near rivers near where you live as well, if you don't live next to the coast. So if we're doing beach watch, the best idea is to mark out your 100-metre stretch, and then you're looking at all the litter that's washed up from the strand line to the back of the beach. Now the strand line is really usually easy to see because it's where all the seaweed is up there, or it's where the tide has last gone up to, so it's all still dry up to the back of the beach. Now the back of the beach for me today is quite easy because there's the esplanade behind it, so it was only about a 2-metre wide stretch of beach that I was surveying today. So as I went along with my litter picker, every time I picked something up, I then wrote it down on my survey sheet. Now the survey sheet's quite handy because it splits up into everything that's made of plastic. We've got rubber, cloth, paper and cardboard, wood, metal. We've got glass, pottery and ceramics, sanitary. So these are things that people have maybe flushed down the toilet when they're not supposed to and they've ended up in the ocean. as well as anything medical like tablet packets, dog poo, and any pollutants that we might find as well. So, should we have a look in my bag and see what we found? So in my bag here, I've got quite a mix of different things. So if we start with plastic first, because that's sadly most of the things that I found quite a few big blocks of this stuff. Does anyone know what this is? This is called polystyrene, so it's in our plastic category, and this is really bad for wildlife because it crumbles so easily and breaks down into smaller pieces. So much of our wildlife, including our seabirds, mistake it for food, and they eat this instead of their normal food, which is not good for them at all. So I'm glad I managed to get that off the beach. But it's not just polystyrene that breaks down, all different types of plastic breaks down. And I found quite a lot of sweetie wrappers. So you can see here, I've got one sweetie wrapper that's starting to break down and another one as well. So it doesn't matter what type of plastic it is, eventually, because of the sea's waves, from the sun, from the wind, they'll start to break down into smaller and smaller pieces, but they'll never disappear. They end up becoming what we call microplastics. So even sea creatures right at the bottom of the food chain, the teeny tiny plankton, will start eating this plastic, and then it'll start working its way up the food chain. So I'm really glad we managed to get all of this plastic off the beach today. So here are a few other items that I found on my quick beach clean today. So we've not just got plastic, things like metal cans are still washing up on our beaches. We've also got cloth as well. So this can sometimes be from people's clothing, rags that people have used and that end up getting washed out to sea and onto our beaches. But sadly, back to plastic, I find this massive cable tie, so that might have come from an industrial source. But also lots of things that clearly have maybe just come from members of the public. So we've got 3 plastic forks here, a straw, and even a plastic pen that has ended up on our beach. And you can already see this plastic fork here is already starting to break down. So this can provide huge impact on our wildlife. And something that's very disguised in this film, you might not have seen it yet, is over here. This is a wet wipe. This is what a wet wipe looks like when it's been flushed wrongly down the toilet and has gone through the system and has ended up on our beaches. So there's a really easy message here that no matter where you live, if you use wet wipes, make sure you do not flush them down the toilet. We say only flush the 3 P's. Pee, poo and paper, that's it. None of this stuff. If you use wet wipes, make sure you put them in the bin and not down the toilet, ending up on our beaches. So I've put all of this information on our survey form, ready to head home and see what we found. So as I was packing up at the end of my beach clean, I found one more item that I wanted to show you, which was this. It's a piece of rope. Now we talked about how all that plastic and other litter breaking down can be a huge negative impact on our wildlife by getting eaten by accident. So many of our animals and our seabirds are eating plastic instead of their normal food. Going back to our leatherback sea turtle earlier, our turtles mistake jellyfish for plastic bags, and they're now eating plastic bags thinking they're jellyfish, which is not good. And we've actually sadly had some turtles strand in the UK, which means when they get washed up the beaches when they're not supposed to, and when we've looked in their tummies, they're full of plastic. So we know that the accidental eating, the ingestion, is a huge problem for wildlife. The other is entanglement. So that usually happens with ropes or big bits of plastic or other things that then our animals get tangled up in, and this might mean they can't swim properly, so they can't maybe get to the surface to breathe if they need to, they can't hunt the food they need to go to, and sadly most of it is made of plastic, which is breaking down as well. So the 2 main issues for marine litter on our wildlife is ingestion and entanglement. So I'm glad we've managed to find this today, and we'll take this off the beach as well. So just to inspire some ocean optimism again, look at that. We've got a lovely rainbow, this time over the road bridges across the Forth, and the sun is out in full force on this lovely St Andrew's Day. So it's the 30th November that I'm recording this for you, ahead of the lecture on Saturday. So after you've done your beach clean or your litter pick, always just make sure to take some time and enjoy the wonderful nature around you. That might be to go rock pooling if you're next to the sea, or to watch wildlife, this beautiful seabird that's just flying in front of us now, or to listen to the garden birds in the woods near you, or have a look for any mini beasts under rocks. Being part of protecting nature and becoming a conservationist, looking after nature, is all about loving it, falling in love with nature again, and encouraging other people to do the same. So this scene will hopefully help you all to remember that you're ocean optimists, and you're going to help take everything that you learned today to protect our wonderful seas, all your favourite sea creatures that are in it, and inspire lots of other people to become ocean optimists too. But I'm going to get all packed up and head home, and then we'll have a chat about what do we use all that information that I gathered on the survey for, and what else can we do to help protect the sea from home. But for now, we'll say cheerio to the sea.
Hello everyone, so I'm back home with my best pal, Sheila the shark, home from the beach, having washed my hands. And normally after a beach clean, I'll have collected all of that information off my clipboard and added and typed it into the Beach Watch website. So at the end of the beach clean, I said, that's what we would maybe do next, have a wee chat at home about what do we do with all that information that not just me, but thousands of incredible volunteers across the UK who go out and do our beach cleans and collect that data for us. Now, they've been doing that for over 25 years, so we have so much information to use, which is so important. And sadly, a lot of people find, like me, that a lot of the litter is plastic. So we actually launched, as the Marine Conservation Society, a campaign called Stop the Plastic Tide to try and pull all of our work and help raise awareness around this issue. So you'll see in the photo on the screen here of one of our lovely turtle species. You can tell by some of the colours of the fish that this isn't around the UK. But this is also just to remind us that although I was next to the sea in Scotland today, the sea connects everybody everywhere. No matter where you drop a piece of litter in, all of our world's oceans are connected. We really only have one ocean, and hence why it gets called our blue planet. So things that you are doing at home, or things that you're doing in Scotland or the UK, could be impacting creatures, say like this turtle, who might be somewhere warm and tropical like the Caribbean, and who has sadly now got a plastic bag in his mouth. I don't know if you remember, what was one of the main problems of marine litter on our wildlife? Was ingestion, wasn't it? So the accidental eating of plastic instead of their normal food. But you could also see maybe where entanglement could be a problem here, and the turtle might get those plastic bags wrapped up in their flippers so they can't swim properly either. So what are we as a charity, as the Marine Conservation, doing then to try and reduce the amount of plastic that's entering our ocean and impacting our wonderful sea creatures? So here's a picture of some of our amazing beach cleaners. So we do have so many volunteers going out to beach cleans and getting huge volumes of litter off the beach. Now, if you don't have time to do a full survey or a full 100-metre stretch, just try and do a mini beach clean whenever you're out there. Every single piece of litter you remove off the beach will be good news for our ocean. And remember, you don't live next to the beach. Any piece of litter that you can pick up outside your house, in the park, next to the river, wherever you live, will also then stop its path in trying to get to the ocean, and will also protect all the wildlife that lives next to you as well. So you'll remember that I had my clipboard, and all of our volunteers are writing down all of that information on what type of litter that they're finding and how much of it, how many bags, how many cans, how many straws, all that type of information. So here's one of our plastic bags that we talked about earlier on. So what we did a couple of years ago was we looked at all the information our volunteers were collecting and saw that the trend, how many plastic bags our volunteers were finding, was going up and up and up. And we knew that they had such a negative impact on our animals, like sea turtles and other species that were eating them instead of their normal food. So we then used this information as evidence to try and get something changed. Now, one of the main ways that we try and get things changed is working with 3 different groups of people. One of them is me and you. We try and help raise awareness about a problem so all of us can take action and maybe try and change our behaviour. So we were encouraging people to try and stop using single-use bags and getting reusable ones instead, and use the same ones again and again. We also work with businesses as well. So if we can work with businesses, supermarkets, different industry, we can try and get them to change their practice as well. So lots of different businesses started seeing what they could do to tackle the plastic bag problem. And many of them actually voluntarily decided to start putting a levy or a charge on their bags, and then they would donate that money to charity. And this just made everyone who went to their shop think, did they actually need that bag? Or could they use one that they could have brought from home instead? So that was fantastic. But at the top, we work with governments across the UK and even across the world to try and get them to change the laws. They're in charge of putting laws in place to protect our ocean and to protect our sea creatures. So because so many businesses had started using this 5p charge, we were like, that's great, but everybody should be doing it. So we asked the governments around the UK to put in place a 5p carrier bag charge. So we could then actually start campaigning on an ask that everyone could get behind. So sometimes it might be a little bit scary thinking that you're just one person, you can't make a difference, but you really can. And what's really powerful is when we all come together and be a voice for the ocean, like this campaign that you can see outside the Houses of Parliament for the UK government. When we all come together and be a voice for the sea, amazing things can happen, and we need every single person as part of that journey. And that's what we did to try and then stop these plastic bags turning up on our beaches. So I'm delighted to say that after all the campaigning and working together with other charities, with the public, with businesses, and with the government, every single country in the UK now has a 5p carrier bag charge. So when you go to do your shopping, if you've forgotten your bags and you need a bag, you need to pay 5p. Now, since that's happened, the amount of people buying and using plastic bags has gone all the way down. And even better news for our ocean, it's actually dropped in how many our volunteers are finding on our beaches by nearly over 50%. So that's a huge difference. And that just shows what can happen from going out and doing a beach cleaning, counting plastic bags, to actually getting the government of the UK to put in place a new law to save our sea. And this is what we try and do with all the information that our volunteers collect, having a look to see what we can do as the public, what can business and industry do, and what can our governments do? What can they do to help protect the sea with all this information that we've collected? There's a couple of other campaigns that's some really nice success stories about what we're trying to do as a charity to reduce the amount of plastic on our ocean, as well as our beach cleans and the campaigns and the 5p carrier bag charge. This guy is our wet wipe monster. So do you remember that wet wipe that I found on the beach earlier on? So what a lot of people don't realise is that our sewer systems, all those pipes that connect up to our bathrooms and our homes, sometimes get overwhelmed if there's been lots of rain or if there's big blockages in the pipes. And that means our water companies have two choices. They could either have everything backing up into our houses and we'd have exploding toilets. Ugh, that would not be good. Or they can use pipes that go out to the ocean to then relieve the pressure on the system. But this then means anything that gets flushed down the toilet can still end up in the seas around the UK. So do you remember that fun message I mentioned on the beach about the 3 Ps? Can you remember what they were? Pee, poo, and paper. That's it. Everything else goes in the bin. So we were looking at wet wipes and we created our wet wipe monster to go around the UK to help raise awareness about the issue. So we wanted to raise awareness with members of the public, everybody who lives at home and has a bathroom, that if they're using wet wipes, to make sure they're disposing of them properly. We then were working with the water industry to have a look at wet wipes, and lots of them had plastic in them. So we were trying to say, well, can we maybe try and stop plastic being used? And we had great success there. And now all wipes that are labelled flushable by our major supermarkets don't contain plastic, which is a fantastic step. So as you can see, we're still finding them on our beaches. So we need to keep that raise awareness going. So if you can maybe be your own little wet wipe monster warrior and make sure people only know about the 3 Ps message, or if they do need to use wet wipes, make sure to look for the fine to flush label, as we know these then don't have plastic and will break up just like toilet paper. But any other wet wipes, definitely straight into the bin to reduce the amount of plastic wet wipes on our beaches. Sometimes it's also the really small things that we campaign on. So do you remember me talking about how plastic can break down into tiny, tiny pieces called microplastics? Well, sometimes plastic is made to be tiny straight away. and there was something called microbeads that was being used in lots of cosmetic products. So this is people's moisturizers and face wash, body scrub, even toothpaste. And they were tiny, tiny little beads made of plastic. And sadly, after someone's had a face wash or had a shower or brushed their teeth, where does everything go? It goes down the drain. And as we know now, that can now end up in the ocean. So we then worked with lots of charities and lots of organizations to get a microbead ban. And again, that was going right to the top and working with the governments around the UK to ban microbeads in wash-off products. So there was no more getting washed down the drain and ending up in our ocean and adding to that microplastic soup problem that we were talking about earlier on. And the last campaign that we're still working on in some parts of the UK is around bottles and cans. So do you remember that can that we found on the beach earlier as well? Well, similar to our bags, we've been seeing the amounts of plastic bottles, glass bottles, metal cans going up and up and up on our beaches around the UK. So we looked around the world for inspiration. What are other countries doing to battle this? And we came across something called a deposit return scheme. Now, we actually used to have one here. If you maybe ask your grandparents, they might be able to remember them or do a little bit of research. And basically meant if we went to go and buy a bottle of lemonade, we would have to pay an extra 10 pence. And then when we went to recycle it, we got our 10 pence back. That was your deposit coming back to you. And because people got their money back, lots of people recycled. So we wanted to bring that back into place in the UK. Now, when it comes to trying to pass new laws from the governments to help protect the sea and to help save the environment, in Scotland, where I work, that is the Scottish government's job. So my campaign was to try and get the deposit return scheme in place in Scotland by working with the Scottish government. I've then got my friends working in Wales and they're trying to campaign with the Welsh government. And I've got my colleagues trying to campaign for the UK government to try and get it in place in England too. Now, I'm delighted, thanks to so many volunteers and so many brilliant organisations who all work together on our campaign called Have You Got the Bottle, the Scottish Government has confirmed that we'll have this starting again in Scotland in just under 2 years' time. So that's a really great step for us, and we couldn't do any of it without people like you, without volunteers helping collect data, without people maybe trying to help sign petitions, speaking to their politicians, or just having a look at their own behaviour and say, well, what can I do to help? And maybe that's what you're thinking just now. What else could I do to help to reduce plastic pollution? So there's things that we can all do, but we've always got to remember it's not just on you. We all need to work on it together, and we always need to remember those other steps. We need to speak to businesses and industry, and we need to speak to everybody in charge at government. Only when we all work together will we be able to save the sea and reduce all of that plastic pollution that we found on the beach today. Now, this diagram here is really useful. You might all remember the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. This is putting in a few extra ones. The one right at the top I think is great. It's rethink. Before we buy anything, before we use anything, just stop and think. Do I actually need to buy this? Do I actually need to use it? Sometimes everything's just so easy to use and buy now that we don't even do this step. So just rethinking what we're buying and what we're using that's made of plastic is a brilliant first step. And then you can also refuse. Some people hand out lots of plastic and not realize that they maybe don't need to be handing it out. So if someone offers you something made of plastic, just have a wee think and then be like, actually, I don't need that, thank you. And that's a brilliant step as well in refusing the amount of plastic that you're using. And then, of course, our familiar one of reducing. Let's just see if we can reduce the amount that we use, the amount that we buy, because if we don't use it in the first place, it won't get disposed of incorrectly and potentially end up in our ocean. Repair is also one that I think we really need to talk more about. There are so many amazing people out there with the skills to repair our plastic products. So before you maybe throw out a toy or a game that's made of plastic, why not do some research and see if there's someone who could help you repair it rather than just putting it in the bin? Because the more use you get out of it, definitely the better. And then, of course, we've got our reuse and our recycle, the ones that we know really well. And it's really important to keep on to them as well. But they're quite far down the waste funnel. So if we can now start thinking more about rethinking and refusing and reducing, that's the best place to be. So there's a few other things that we can do, and you're doing one of them today by watching the children's lecture. There'll be so many amazing speakers where you'll be learning so many different things. And for me, it's one of my favorite parts of the job in that I learn something new every single day. So keeping on educating ourselves, keep on learning. There's loads of different documentaries. This is one by Liz Bonin called Drowning in Plastic. But there's so many brilliant programs, brilliant charities and organizations that you can follow and learn more about. You can also go to the MCS website where we've got a whole section called our Cool Seas program, which is full of different lesson plans for home, at school, and other projects that you can do. So if you go to www.mcsuk.org/coolseas, you'll be able to find all of that there to help you on your learning journey. And this will really help you with raising awareness. Do you remember us becoming ocean optimists and learning about our different sea creature symbols? Try and use this to help others start learning about what's happening to our ocean. Get them to be ocean optimists and then raise awareness about what's happening, especially about plastic pollution, and what can they do to help. And use your voice. Do you remember when we talked about me being a scuba diver, being underneath the sea? I couldn't use my voice, I had to use my hands. But all of our sea creatures in the sea itself doesn't have a voice. So we need to be that voice. We need to be speaking to our friends, to our family, to local businesses, to our local politicians to get them to understand what's happening to our ocean and what can we do to help protect it. And of course, there's loads of practical things that you can do to take action. So one of my favorite things to recommend that everyone does is take part in our plastic challenge. Now, we run this every July as part of the big global plastic-free July, but you can start it at any time. And it's about trying to reduce the amount of single-use plastic. So plastic you might only use once and then throw away. Think about those plastic forks and straws and polystyrene that we found on the beach today. Most of those things were just used once and then got chucked. How much are you using? And could you give it up for a day, a week, a month, permanently? This is all about trying to have a look about how much we use single-use plastic and then how much can we reduce it in the first place. So why don't you take on the plastic challenge no matter where you live, because the amount that you reduce will then help save our ocean. But as part of that, use your voice to help raise awareness, share your stories, share your successes, share where you failed, tag your local supermarket and businesses to see if they could help you, and continue to learn. That's the best thing that you can do for our ocean. So a huge thank you to everyone today for tuning in and for listening. We would love to keep the conversation going. So please do head to our website at www.mcsuk.org, where you'll find all of the contact details for myself, for everyone in the team. And hopefully we've put a little bit of ocean optimism into your Saturday, and enjoy learning from all of the other speakers at the Royal Geographical Society's Children's Lecture Day. But for now, from me and Sheila the Sark, it's cheerio. Bye everyone.